Let the complaining begin. It's already begun. The brackets are set, and of course, the complaining is already started. The whining about positioning, the whining about seating. It's already started, man. And who else better to start the complaining than someone who has a one seed? Dawn Staley, already complaining. And we'll show you what she had to say about South Carolina's one seed. Welcome back, everyone, to another edition of Rudy's Rant, where we talk facts for feelings, her way, women's basketball. It's her game, her way, women's basketball podcast. I appreciate y'all coming on. Still getting used to adding that to my title because I want to differentiate women's sports, men's sports for basketball, football, baseball, etc. Let's talk about this. For those of you who are back again, I appreciate y'all. Be sure to like the video, leave a comment. For those of you who are new, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell. The brackets are set, and Dawn Staley's already complaining. So let's show you what Dawn Staley had to say about where her team got positioned in the bracket. Let's take a look.
Here that you didn't get the number one overall seed, but you are a one seed and you have a really great path in Birmingham. What was the reaction?
I don't know. I looked back and I saw that they didn't react. I don't even think they knew they were on television. So, and then once they were, they played it cool. I mean, I'm a little bit of surprised because we manufacture our schedule to put ourselves in a position to be the number one overall seed. And I do think if you do, the blind test and you put our resume against any other team in the field, I think you'll pick us. That's just plain and simple. I'm gonna speak on it tonight, and it's not gonna be a motivation for us moving forward. It's hard enough to win a national championship. We don't need a chip on our shoulder. We do need to voice it. I do need to voice the fact that we put a schedule together. We got the most quad wins, and if having more quad one wins doesn't supersede some of the hiccups that we had during the season, I don't know what will. So for us, maybe we don't put ourselves in a position where we have hiccups, so we aren't, they don't have to lower the standard for us to get a number one overall seed.
Well, I can speak for fans everywhere when I say, no, you set the standard because we liked seeing those early season games and big time matchups, even if there were hiccups, as you call them. You've got to think that it made your team better and a chance to repeat as national champions. It's toughened you for the perfect moment in some respects.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, that's why we do it. We schedule November and December for March and April. And every single time that, we had a hiccup during the season, we've gotten better. And I think to the point of playing our best basketball now, not just collectively, but individuals are playing their best basketball. So, we get a chance to host, and I hope we take care of business. And I hope we just put ourselves in a position to prove the committee wrong by getting back to Tampa. If we don't get back to Tampa, then the committee might have a say in it, which we don't want them to have a say in it now that we find out, what region we're in and we are our path to Tampa.
The good news is you'll be in Birmingham if you take care of your business, like you said, and you're hosting. And I've seen what the fans do. Your fans drive to Greenville, South Carolina. That building is packed and electric. What could we look forward to of some kind of a home court advantage in Birmingham with the fans you have and the way they travel?
Yeah, I'm super proud that our fans put us in a position where they create a home court advantage no matter where we are. Greenville, of course, but there were so many fans when we opened the season in Vegas. There are so many fans when we visit Georgia. There's so many fans for wherever we go across the country. When we opened the season in Paris, they were there. So I'm happy we're in Birmingham. I'm happy that we're in driving distance because our fans do buy tickets and they do make women's basketball a great place to watch and to support.
So now that you've heard what Dawn Staley had to say, what do you think? I know what I think. I think she's crying. I think she's whining. And I think it's a waste of time. I think complaining about being seeded number one, but being the number two overall seed is utterly ridiculous. If you've looked at their bracket is not very difficult. In fact, if you look at the bracket for UCLA, their bracket's not very difficult. I talked about it already in my preview last night, where I said that if UCLA and South Carolina are not in the Final Four, I'd be shocked. I'd be absolutely shocked. But I got a problem with some of the stuff that she says because she's talking about how she's scheduled. Yeah, she had a very tough schedule. That's what good teams do. They schedule tough games. Some games don't work out because you go to events. And if one of the teams that you're supposed to or you expect to play loses, then you might not play them. But we can take a look at her games. They have a win over NC State by 14. They have a win over Iowa State by 40. They have a win over Duke by 11. They have a win over TCU by 33. These are all in the first 10, 12 games of the season. They beat Texas. They beat Alabama, Oklahoma. These are conference games. Keep that in mind. They beat LSU. They beat Tennessee. Then they beat Kentucky, Oklahoma again, and Texas again. But you cannot ignore this. You cannot ignore this. It's just, I'm sorry. You can't ignore this. This is not something you can ignore. You cannot sit here and say that this is not smacking you right in the face. You cannot lose by 29 points on your home floor a month ago while telling me and telling us you're playing the best basketball you've played all season. This was a month ago. You lost by 29 points to UConn on your home court. That doesn't go away. That just doesn't go away. That can't be ignored. And then when you're comparing it to who you think, who the team that finished with the number one seed was, again, you can't ignore it. You got beat head to head by 15 points, a game that was a 21-point game at halftime. You cannot ignore it. You can't. And you also lost to Texas, who you then came back and beat again for the second time. I've been on record saying I don't think Texas is as good as their record. I don't know how they won as many games as they did. And I didn't think South Carolina played that great in the SEC championship. It was an otherwise horrible game to watch. But when you're telling me about why you should be the number one overall seed, well, now I can show you another team, the team that is the number one overall seed. UCLA did not play the same schedule that South Carolina played. They did not. No question about it. They're also not in the SEC that gets favorable ranking just about all the time. But let's look at who they played. They beat Louisville. They beat South Carolina by 15. They beat Michigan. They beat Indiana. They beat Baylor. They beat Maryland. They beat Ohio State. They beat Michigan State. They beat Illinois. They crushed Ohio State when they played them again in the Big Ten tournament. And then they did come back and beat USC. Their only two losses are losses to USC. And yet they beat you. Like, if you had beaten them, we're not having this conversation. We're saying that South Carolina's number one overall seed. but they beat you head to head, and it wasn't a close game. We can even look at USC's record and compare them and say, look, they beat Ole Miss. They lost to Notre Dame. They beat UConn. Who beat you? They beat Michigan. They beat Maryland. Oh, by the way, UCLA beat Iowa. At Iowa. Iowa's a 6 seed. They beat Ohio. USC beat Ohio State. They beat UCLA twice. They beat Michigan State. They beat Illinois. They have a lot of strong wins. Heck, I mean, the one that you can argue against the most, because I thought UConn should have been a 1 seed. I thought UConn should have absolutely been a 1 seed. If someone's going to have an argument, it's UConn, because UConn's going to face USC more than likely in the Elite Eight for the chance to go to the Final Four again in a rematch. That is the toughest bracket, in my opinion. The toughest bracket. And I don't think UConn should have been ranked 5th. They were actually ranked 3rd in the final rankings. They're ranked 3rd ahead of SC. Even though they lost to SC. They're ranked 3rd. They have losses to Notre Dame. They have a 2-point loss to USC. And they have a 4-point loss at Tennessee. They beat South Carolina on the road by 29 points. They beat Creighton twice in the last 2 weeks of the season. A ranked team. They beat Louisville by 33. They beat Ole Miss by 13. They beat North Carolina by 11. Their record, their schedule is not as stacked. It's not. They did also beat Iowa State by 33 points. And I'm just looking at rankings because rankings change when you play teams. But to sit here and complain about not being a 1 seed, the number 1 seed overall, when you got your ass kicked, not once, but twice, to 2 of the top 3 teams in the country in final ranking, and you're complaining about it, saying, oh, well, our overall resume, well, I can argue that your resume had you playing a lot of home games. You played LSU at home. You didn't have a home and home with LSU. You got LSU on your home court. Texas is not as good as people think. There's a lot of things. A lot of these teams in the SEC get overranked as far as I'm concerned. No one's saying you didn't have a bunch of great wins, and I think you're seated properly, the 2nd overall seed. In what world are we complaining about this? And then saying my schedule, well, the problem is you lost by 15 points to the team seated ahead of you. And they only lost 2 games to 1 team. But you let me know your thoughts. This is gonna end up being a really great tournament, very competitive overall. But my goodness, Dawn Staley's already doing that chip on her shoulder thing, and it's cute. But give me a break, man. You let me know your thoughts. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Leave a comment, like the video, subscribe to the channel. This is Rudy's Rant, Her Game, Her Way, Women's Basketball Podcast. Appreciate y'all. Come on now.